visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Dave Brown. You are watching TTR Points of View. For myself, it's awesome to be back after, more than a month away. I hope everybody's had a good break. If you're a teacher like myself, I was back this week. Feels like I've never been away. So our other guests today are Ray and Lucy. Welcome, everyone.
Morning.
How are we all feeling this week?
Good.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So our first topic today is about getting straight into it, is about AI. It seems quite pressing at the moment. I know a lot of stuff at my work is all about AI. Just very quickly, my work has taken the choice this week to basically remove access to most forms of AI for both teachers and students until they can work out a better way of policing it. So I thought, it's very, very relevant at the moment. That was their choice. I don't know what other schools are doing. Be interesting to hear from some of our viewers about their schools, if that's the case. So the article we're looking at is from The Guardian from last week. And the headline there says, A-levels and GCSEs need overhaul to keep pace with generative AI, experts say. And basically, the article goes through the idea that because of AI, the people in this article believe that exams will need a radical shift in the next few years. New exams will be needed to test how effectively students are at using AI. And one of the academics put forward the idea that maybe in the future exams, I couldn't work out if this was A-level or GCSE, would essentially be students looking at essays that are already done and correcting them, I think is what they were trying to say. I have pretty strong views on this, but I'll leave those for the moment. I'm interested in what, Ray, why don't you go first? What were your thoughts on this article?
So I just got back from 2 weeks in Canada. And granted, none of my family at this reunion are teachers, but we still spent a long time talking about education. And AI kept coming up over and over and over again. And I had to explain to various friends and family of all ages that actually we in the UK were in a slightly better position than a lot of North American schools and school districts are, and that we have these national exams where students actually have to go in with a pen and a paper and write things down. And for most GCSEs, coursework is limited, so it's quite hard actually to cheat on your GCSE exams with AI. Anyway, there are lots of ways to mess it up, but that's not usually one of them. Using them in the exam, and people were surprised by this. They're like, "Oh, maybe that's the way we need to go." Thinking that, these non-education experts were thinking maybe. I feel like everything's gone full circle. Maybe we in North America need to be a little bit more British and have more pen and paper exams. So there, it's conversations that common folk over on that side of the world are having, is that they need to do more of what we're doing now. Whereas I think it's funny that we're looking at our system and thinking, what else do we need to do instead of this? Because this, as it is problematic. So I feel like everyone everywhere is struggling with this at the minute. And it's interesting what you said about your school basically banning AI for staff until they figure it out. Because I felt last year, like I was screaming into the void at multiple points, because my school was spent not a huge amount of hours, but enough for it to be frustrating, of CPD and meetings and so on, talking about how staff can use AI to make their job easier and in an ethical way, not overriding our professional judgment or ideas or anything like that, but like more for admin tasks, or to kind of come up with, really simple things that don't take any brain power or considerable expertise, but do take a lot of time. How we can use AI to use those things. And on the surface, like, great, cool. Anything that gives me less time, less stress and more time, I'm on board with. But then when you think about the context of it and what that could lead to, and the boundaries and the slippery slopes and the water usage and the billionaires, and it all just gets very uncomfortable for me very, very quickly. And I felt like I was, every time I brought that up, I was just being, not by SLT, but by my colleagues, my friends, every time I brought it up, I was being kind of shut down for being a troglodyte or for being just anti-progress or wanting to make my life more difficult, as if that's anyone's goal ever.
What
So
are
I've
your
got
thoughts?
lot of
Sorry.
complicated feelings.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Lucy?
Well, I mean, I found it really interesting to. I couldn't figure something out in it. I couldn't understand why it would be a problem for students to be using AI as a pretty much a tailored tutor, because so provided you have access to a mobile phone at the very least. Actually, I saw it as a sort of a leveling up tool that everybody finally tutorage and or if that's the right word, would be accessible to everybody. And the only difference that it will make is if you have the ability, academic ability, to interpret the answer you've been given and work out what you should ask further to develop that answer. So you can't use your phone in an exam. It did say about hidden earpieces.
Oh, I thought that was absolute garbage. Yeah.
No,
It's a joke. Yeah.
Like, how would that work? Because you would have to tell it, I've got a question here about, like, I just didn't understand how that.
I don't know if these people have ever been into exams. I was talking to my wife about the article this morning, and she said that's what an invigilator's job is. You know, like we've had students going back. I've been at the same college now for 16 years. And when I started, we had a student who was caught cheating, trying to write all like the answers. Now, it couldn't be history because that would be bizarre, on their arm, and people who try and hide notes in the toilet. So the idea that students have only now started to cheat seemed rather odd. And the idea that it's some sort of James Bond where a student's going to have an earpiece in and it seemed to be Google glasses. And would be sitting there. I was like, no, that's maybe the EPQ. I could sort of see where they were coming from, but I still very skeptical. But yeah, their idea, we have to radically rip it up because students will go in and talk to an AI bot. Like, I think an invigilator would see in a quiet room of, say, 400 students, someone chatting to themselves and trying to listen to an earpiece. And you could do that. You could have a friend, it's like, what? That was just so weird.
That was ridiculous.
So I found that really odd. I do agree with some of the idea of the AI removing our ability to think creatively. But I don't actually think that even applies here. I think that applies in later life. I think that comes when we get older and we have to write a letter to somebody, or we have to try and persuade somebody of something on paper or whatever, your CV. Those are the kinds of things that it could rob that creativity. But I think it's quite creative if you're 15, 16, 18, and you're asking AI, so if this happened, what would be the outcome if I did? I can't see a problem with it. But I don't use AI for anything at the moment. I have to jump on board. I just don't even know where to begin. So,
I mean, I can't remember if I read it or someone told me at the college. But I do know, I don't think this is the biggest problem that schools are facing. One of the bigger problems schools are facing with AI is parents doing complaint letters and then asking ChatGPT, have you heard about this, to write a legalese type letter of complaint and put in, references to law. And schools and colleges are getting letters that are 20 pages long, written in this very bizarre legal language as a way of threatening schools. Now that's wasting people's time. That's a bigger problem. I've got to say straight away, I'm a huge AI skeptic. Like I read all this stuff. I go to university conferences, and I'm not saying it's not going to have any effect, but I think so much is overblown. What I didn't like about the article is all the people they interview all have jobs attached to AI and AI being successful. If you have a role at a university that's like AI investor, I'm trying to make up a title now, off the top of my head, but these roles we all know about, then you have to say it's the most important thing. You're not going to say, oh, they give me this job and I'm like, I would be the worst person for these types of roles. And I just see it at this stage as it can be useful. I think students can use it. I think they could be trained better to use it. But this idea that it's going to radically change the exams, I just don't see it, that it's going to, have this massive effect that we won't even be able to predict where we'll be in 4 years. I'm yet to see it. I think it can be helpful in certain mundane tasks, but even then, the marking bit makes me laugh. I've just finished doing my marking for A-level. I work for one of the exam boards. The idea that AI is going to radically help us, I think anybody who did marking this year would be highly skeptical of that. And what was OCR saying? Oh, we'll be able to take students' written work and make it into type work. Okay, that might save us some time. But the idea they had, which would be that therefore you could have the university offers at the start of the summer because this would speed up the marking. I just thought, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I mark type papers, and I mean, it's just so far from this idea. I see this a lot with marking, with teachers working out, can AI help with marking? I'm yet to see it. I think the best way to help with marking is to actually just change your whole marking policy, less comments. There's ways of doing it. This idea that AI is going to, I just see it as like everybody's just wait till you get around the corner. And I'm yet to see it. Maybe I'll be totally wrong. Maybe in 3 years' time I'll look like an idiot. But I just am a massive skeptic at this stage.
No, I'm with you. And I'm so tired of the marking conversation because that kept coming up this summer as well. Oh, but don't you have a lot of marking? You teach English. Yes, and a human needs to mark what a human's written. Like try and get a robot to mark a creative writing. No, absolutely not. And the day that actually happens, I'll quit. So if you saw
some of the higher maths papers and some of the brightest students, and pages of scrawl with numbers, like the memes of those chalkboards covered. That's what those exam papers look like. And I mean, humans struggle. We would all get together and go, well, has he got, and we'd all be trying to find something in there. So the idea that AI would be able to turn its head upside down and look around and all, I just don't. I don't buy it. But
it actually goes the other way, Lucy. Oh, sorry.
Go on. Go on.
Well, what happened, I'm not going to name the exam board, but the exam board I worked for decided we'll use a computer to do what used to happen is a long time ago, we used to go to a big room, a big conference in London, and you'd mark with people. Then it went online, still okay. You're talking about people, you're looking at papers, you're discussing, and you're sort of coming to an agreement about what the standards were. This year, they decide, no, we're going to use computers to do it. It's going to be super quick. You'll just mark, and the computer will be able to tell you if you've got it right or wrong, and it'll be fast. No, it wasn't fast. What happened was that it was basically, I know that cliche, computer says no. So you'd mark it, the computer say, oh, you're outside of tolerance. Okay, why? And the computer wouldn't tell you why. You were locked out of the marking. Eventually, they had to get people on board. They essentially had to shut it down, have discussions, all the stuff that if we'd had 1 day meetings, which we used to have, would have been quicker than what ended up happening because the computer couldn't have that nuance, particularly for a subject like history. Now, I don't know about maths. Maybe it's different. And when people wanted to have discussions, even the lead examiners were like, oh, I'm not sure why it's done that. And then once you were locked out, it was really hard to get people on board, which meant papers weren't being marked, which meant there was a huge rush. So it just was this idea, it's going to save us heaps of time. No, it isn't fit for purpose. It didn't. It actually was it meant longer. It was more painful. It didn't work. And that's why my sort of skepticism, when I read that, I was like, well, just being through the experience I have, that's laughable. Maybe 10 years time, but certainly not soon. Sorry, what were you going to say before, Lucy?
Well, actually, I was going to talk to you about our sponsors. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishes professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. And I also just wanted to mention the Chalk and Talk podcast. If you're looking for another great education podcast, podcast. Check out Chalk and Talk with Anna Stokey. Anna is a passionate advocate for evidence-based maths education for all students of all ages. On her podcast, she talks about everything from effective teaching methods and how-to guides for teaching maths facts to tips for evaluating research show claims. She brings on top-notch guests, educators, researchers and policymakers, and discusses issues that directly impact teachers and students. Chalk and Talk is for anyone interested in education. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. And so, I mean, back to the discussion. I don't. You've put it up on the screen here. Will AI mean a radical shift in the nature of exams? I don't think it has to, and I would be very worried that it would be being used to force a change that isn't necessary, you know, under the guise of, well, we've got to change things. I just don't think it's necessary. Unless we find evidence of an issue, but we're just trying to think what the issues could be, and I think that we have to let it play out more.
No, totally agree. Ray, have you got any more thoughts on this one?
That's exactly how I felt, Lucy. Like, I feel like it's being used to kind of push something that doesn't need to happen, and maybe that's all just I don't know. The whole thing depresses me, absolutely depresses me. I feel like a robot might as well do my job, and why am I even here? Really,
I don't think we've reached that stage, right?
Every time, I had to walk out of a couple meetings last academic year because I was just like, you're telling me as an English teacher that my ability to string a sentence and use punctuation accurately is no longer relevant. And it's just like, why am I here? Why am I teaching it to kids? Why am I here? One thing I can do in my life is write, and now no one cares. So it's frustrating, but I don't think it's going to affect the exams. I don't think it has to affect the exams. And maybe in 10 years, though, you know, more than just James Bond's kid will have the glasses and we'll have an actual problem, but I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon.
No. And I think change could take a long time. The idea of having a student on a desk writing on a piece of paper with a pen is one of the I remember someone once said to me that if someone came back from the past, say the 1800s, one of the only things they'd be able to recognize is exams and probably a school situation. It's one of the things that, like, they'd probably be able to go to a school that so many other things like cars, they'd be like, what the hell is this? But if they went to a classroom, they would look at it and go, oh, that's a school, because it hasn't essentially changed that much. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there is something about standing up in front of students. And I think that's the same with the exam. If they went to an exam hall and saw students sitting there in silence writing their papers, they'd say, oh, those students are sitting some type of exam. The other thing that article said about going to Vibers, you know, I'm at a college with thousands. We have 154 students this year who just did A-level history alone. Over 1,000 doing maths. Now, I guess maths is different. English literature. If you add that up at a college of our size, which is 4,200 people, the idea of a Viber, I was like,
what is one?
Well, okay, so a Viber. Oh, sorry, Lucy, did you say what's a Viber?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm just assuming everybody knows. So a Viber is what you do when you're doing a PhD, or, you know, in Europe, they do have oral exams. But essentially, you sit in front of a panel and you'd be asked questions and you have to justify it. It's part of finishing your doctorate. It's quite common across the world. I do know in Europe and other areas, they do have oral exams. I think they're massively problematic. You know, if they're done online, then there's way more. I guess they're saying, well, I'd have to do it live, because if you're doing it at home, then actually the use of AI is way more problematic. So I guess what they're saying is that students would go in front of a panel of history teachers. Now, how you do that, how you'd align with other colleges, schools doing A-level or GCSE, how you do it for hundreds of, I read that. So essentially it's a live oral examination where you'd sit there in front of a panel and be asked questions. And it does say in that article, or maybe that's a way out of AI. I mean, I thought AI was supposed to save us time and be better. How could you possibly use that and know that this teacher's questions were different? I mean, it's just absurd. Like, I just thought, well, that's not going to happen. That's crazy.
No.
So I'm still very skeptical of these jobs that make you have to claim that this is the future. And I can't remember. It was in the Atlantic, but I read a really good article in the summer that I thought, yeah, like anything, it's sort of, I'm already on board with a lot of what the journalist said. But he said one of the dangers of AI is it will always be close to good enough. And what he meant was that AI will allow us to do certain things, but we're always waiting for this massive breakthrough. And so we're always, it's going to make these changes. So we act, I think is what you were saying, Ray. We in schools are acting and preparing as if it's going to make this fundamental change. And this journalist was actually arguing that that's a danger because it probably won't ever be good enough, but we're planning and doing so much CPD as if it will be. And he said it's the worst of both worlds. It's never going to be, it's going to be okay, but it's never going to be as revolutionary as we've been proposed. But we're spending a hell of a lot of time preparing as if it will be. So we're stuck in this horrible middle where it's not really going to help us, but we're doing too much. Is that making sense? I'm not. Is that what you were getting at, Ray, that annoys you?
Yeah. Well, no, everything annoys me about it. Every single thing. But in terms of the way it's treated in schools, I feel like, because even when we had to get our computers out and we were trying different AIs that would help us with different things, teachery things, stuff. And some people can log on, and I mean, as old as computers, some people can log on, some people couldn't put in the right prompts to get it to work. Some people were using the wrong site. I mean, it was just like, I just feel like I'm stuck in this never-ending tech loop where whatever the new thing is, I end up in a hall with my colleagues at our laptops and people screaming and crying. And it's just, if it's not one thing, in a few years, it's another. And I just feel like these types of this AI being used for this purpose is another example of that. And I would be interested if I'm proven wrong. I just don't think that I will be. I think it's gonna, at some point, people are gonna go, and move on. And those people who've been treating it as a glorified search engine will continue doing so because it has its purposes. I get that. But I think the fancy stuff that schools are keen to take on to make themselves look very 21st century is just gonna fade out.
I mean, the pitch. The pitch we keep being given is it will save time. It's going to save you time. It's going to cut down on workload. I mean, maybe I've seen some bits where you can take huge amounts of data and it will write reports very quickly. I mean, those things are useful, but I think it's already starting to come around to an extent. We've had some issues with universities from our college. They run a lot of sessions in the summer, which can be really good in terms of, discussion panels with teachers. Again, a university I won't name, but in London, was running a session again in the summer on how AI will change teaching. And they just weren't getting that much pickup. And they came and asked us about it at the college and said, you guys came to last year's, why aren't you interested? And we said, we just had enough. And they said to us, I teach history. They said, what's your biggest thing then in teaching? And we said, in fact, not enough students are doing history anymore. Numbers are declining at A level. I'm way more worried about that than this AI tech. And they seem to be surprised by that. They were like, oh, that's good to know. So it was interesting in the sense that they were already noticing a down because I think exactly what you're saying, right? Like we got to the summer and we're like, that university did such a good session last year on something actually relevant to history. Another AI, how it's going to change. No, I'm not interested in going to London for that. I'm over it. So I do keep seeing these incredible proposals of what it's got, but it's always around the corner. And I think that's what that journalist was getting at, which I tend to agree, although I've got to say I'm not a tech person, that it will always be just around the corner, that we'll never quite get to this revolutionary state. And yet we'll always act as if, don't worry, it's going to get there. It's going to get there. Have you got anything to add, Lucy?
To be fair, not particularly, because I can see a real use in terms of, like you said, getting that data together, although we already have systems in schools that do that anyway. But generally you have to input things. I mean, I'm thinking of some of the lengthy things we used to have to do. So you've got maybe 26 questions in a maths paper, a GCSE maths paper, and some of them are part A and B and maybe even C and D. And you would have to fill in on a spreadsheet the marks that the students got for each of the questions, because then that would mark it as green if you got all the marks available, etc. And then you could compile those areas and work out where. AI won't be able to do that because it's got to physically be done by leafing through the maths paper. So I'm thinking that so much of what what AI does has to be input by humans first. Anyway, I used it once to try and search something about a new boundary, and it didn't know anything. And then I said to my son, well, it was rubbish, it didn't know anything. He went, of course it doesn't, because people have got to put it in first. And I thought, well, I thought that whole point was that it was clever enough. The humans didn't need to do. I thought it took our places, but we've still got to feed it first. It's just so I'm not a skeptic. I can see. I tell you what I want AI to do. I want AI to trawl through all my WhatsApps, all my emails from all my different accounts and all my places, and put all the dates of things in my diary, it all in one place. That's all I want AI to do. If it can do that, then I think it's wonderful. But beyond that, I want to write my own stuff. I know I have my own voice. When I do a piece of writing, it's been written in my voice, and I don't want to lose that. But the speed at which we're going to be expected to do things because AI can do it for us might mean that we all have to capitulate. And so I'm a bit resistant, I have to say.
That scares me. That absolutely terrifies me. Oh, you just email this parent, get AI to do it.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Yeah,
I have something to say. I'm going to say it the way I want to say it, and it's not going to
Yes.
take 5 seconds. So you're going to give me time to do the job properly, or the job's not going to get done. So
That's
that
exactly it.
looking forward, that absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that is a concern, Ray, in that the loss of skills. It is quick. It can do it. I mean, I'm guilty of that, of writing a letter and then saying, can you make this sound more professional? And it is amazing what it can do there. But then I think I really should have done that myself. You can get lazy with AI to do those sort of things. And I think over time we could lose those skills, but maybe that's what technology's for. I have to say we're very all in line here without too much debate. I think we feel very similar about AI. So I do have to, Tom Rogers has said he totally disagrees with this. I'm going to voice a disagree. He thinks AI will be able to mark most of everything in the future. I've got to say I disagree with Tom, but I could definitely be proven wrong. I do also, absolutely cards on the table. I do like the bit of money that I get from my exam board for doing my A-level marking every summer. So I also would not want to be replaced by a computer for that. But, maybe Tom's right. And maybe in the future I'll get my summers back, but I'll have a bit less money to spend on my holidays. So who knows? I am very skeptical. But I know a lot of people disagree with that. Like I said, I guess my big thing is in those articles, I would like to see a bit more of a voice from someone who is not working or employed in an area where their whole job is to make sure AI is prominent. I feel we could be moving into something like the IT bubble crash in the late 90s, but I could be horribly, horribly wrong. So these are things, that, to move forward with. I'd be interested to hear about other teachers and what their views are and what schools are doing. My other thing is, at this stage, I'm not so bothered about it's all the cheating part. But I think AI can be used well. And students who are using it because they couldn't be bothered to actually do the research aren't reading it properly, and at the moment we find them very easily. I teach a very brief unit on the history of the UK's colonization of Sudan in the 1800s. Now, I had a student who handed me work on their notes that had about the Sudanese civil war now. So they hadn't. I was like, I know you've used AI. Oh, how can you tell? Because this is about Sudan now. You haven't read it. So they just put into AI.
Yeah.
Because they were rushed. If a student was using it well, you probably can't tell. And I guess in a way I'm like, well, I don't have that much of a problem because they would have had to know stuff to know it's correct. Well, this student had already got themselves into a bad situation. It was like, AI will help me. So it was so obvious that it didn't really help them. So at this stage, I'm less bothered by that because I think if a student uses it well, they're already having to do some research to know the right parameters, to do the right search, to maybe make things slightly better. A student who is trying to cheat, in want of a better word, would have done that without AI. I don't know what they would have done in the past, but something they might not have handed in anything at all. But it isn't hard. Like this idea that I think people outside of teaching have, it must be so hard to find when students have used AI. No, it's actually at this stage really, really easy. And if I don't know, then they would have, they probably know. It's okay. Like they have used it well, and they have to know something to use it well, if that's making sense. So
yeah, that makes sense.
At this stage, I think people have this idea outside that we must be bamboozled by this incredible tech. At the moment, I would say, no, not much at all. So moving on to our next topic, which is prescient at the moment, again, because we've just gone through exams. So this has been all over the press, in The Guardian, The Telegraph, the BBC, you name it, which is the idea about GCSE resits. So the overall pass rate, if people haven't picked up on this, for GCSE English and maths has gone down, but that is mainly because of students resitting it who had already failed, for want of a better word, less than a 4 in previous years. So the actual rate in terms of students sitting it for the first time is, I think, pretty good. I could be wrong on this, but I think it's pretty good, if not actually going up. But the resits are terrible. I think it's only around 20% of students were able to pass second or third time over. Obviously, the previous government, the Conservatives, were very proud of the idea that every student had to keep resitting and resitting until they passed. So there's a lot of talk. OCR have published a large article on this saying it's time to end this system. There's a lot of talk about the Labor government looking at this again and deciding whether to change the system. There's lots of talk about how you do it, and also about why is it that students can't pass second or third time around, that they're just redoing it. Obviously, I teach at a college. We have students who are resitting English and maths. It's a fair amount. The college pass rates are pretty good, which is how I knew how low the country on a whole is. But yeah, we have some students who have resat, because they do November, don't they, like 4 times by the time they leave college. And I'm not really sure what happens to the students who never pass, because some don't. So I'm not sure how we feel about it, if we got strong thoughts. I think, Lucy, you've got very strong opinions on this one. What is thinking?
I have. Well, I have very strong opinions, and I have very strong experience, because I failed my maths GCSE at school. I failed my resit at college, and I only actually passed it in adulthood. So I know what it's like to struggle to do maths. I know why people, I believe I know why people struggle to do maths. I found the article really irritating, the Guardian article. I have to say, the BBC one was factual, but language like forcing students, tormenting 16-year-olds, this is not helpful. It's not helpful at all. So I could do all the maths, so I could do all the basics of maths with my eyes closed. I'd never had a problem with that, but I struggled a bit with concentrating anyway, with disruption in lessons when I was at school. We didn't actually have a maths teacher when I was at school. We had a PE teacher one year. We had just anybody, probably qualified in ways to do it, but not, we had a humanities teacher for a while. So we had a very elderly teacher with Parkinson's in the first year, and he was really elderly and really struggled, and we were mixed ability class. I mean, you couldn't have created a worse climate, really, to be able to do maths and to take those skills forward. But I agreed with the article, the BBC, saying you can identify those young people who will end up having to resit from really early on in their school ages. And the issue that I always had, and I was very fortunate, so because I was an HLTA in a maths department, I took out students who were either having behaviour problems, many who were just scared of maths and very quiet in class and wouldn't join in with anything. Sometimes I took students who were on the foundation paper in a foundation class but had already achieved a grade 5 on the foundation paper, so they wanted them to go to higher, but they'd missed too much to go into the set above. So I took a whole range of different students, and one of the things I found that was different about me from my colleagues was that I was given I didn't have to match the speed of the curriculum because I had behaviour problems in my class, because I had students who really struggled with maths. I was able to run things, so I wouldn't rush off. And one thing I always found when I was at school was that you're just starting to get something, you think, oh, maths, oh, that was that thing we were doing, and I got that. And you go in and they're like, right, so today we're going to do a new topic, and you'd think, oh, you know, and so you never quite got to consolidate what you learned. And so anyway, that was what I feel that's some of the problem, and that's why you can identify those young people very early on, because they're already the ones who just take a bit longer, who need a bit more practice, and everything's moved on and you're on to the next. I taught some GCSE resit groups, and the reason so many students, or so few students, don't get it the second time around, the third time around, they don't come to the lessons. They might come for the first few weeks and then they drop out and they don't come. And because the importance is to keep them in the sixth form, because they do bring money, you know, that pupil per head funding, you want them to succeed in the courses that they're doing. That is already, I guess, you know, they've already failed their maths. What you're being judged on now is their A levels or their, you know, BTECs or whatever it is they're doing. And so you don't want to cause these big disruptions over something that matters less than what they're doing, if you see what I mean. I don't think it's a good idea to perpetually make students feel like they're being punished for failing to achieve their maths. That's how I felt. That's why I didn't pass it the second time either, because my dad made me do it and I didn't want to. And so I didn't really attend, I didn't really do the work. We had coursework when I resat, which was strange. But I would say that I quite liked the idea that Rishi Sunak had, where everybody did some level of maths, albeit financial or something like that, through to 18. And at that point, that would have meant that everybody was doing some sort of maths. And if you happened to be in the resit class, if you weren't in there, you'd be doing maths somewhere else anyway. And I think that might have made things a little bit easier, to be fair. So if I leave it at that for the time being, and I can come back and...
I was just... No, that's fantastic, Lucy. I was just looking at the stats. So this was the highest ever resit. So 23.4% of the entire student body who took the GCSEs were resits for maths and English, in terms of like the maths and English GCSEs, which is the highest amount ever. And the pass rate for those was only 20% for the English resits and 17% for the maths resit. So if we go the other ones, I'm thinking of my maths. So 83% of students failed the maths and 80% fail around that, failed the English, which is incredible. I don't know. I mean, the only thing about I don't have strong feelings either way on this one, I got to say, and I can see arguments for both. I do think just making students go over and over and over again seems rather like the same exam. I'm not sure that's so helpful. But I would say, Lucy, the only Rishi Sunak's idea is all well and good if you ignore the fact that they can barely get enough math teachers to teach high school maths at the moment. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the most under-recruited areas. There's PE teachers having to do maths. So his idea that we'd have enough maths teachers to teach all students up to 18, I'm neither here nor there on it. My only question would be, right, so where are they coming from? We can't recruit at the moment.
Theory of it was
good. A level, it's a horrible situation. And I wonder if that's part of the problem where you're having students do badly in maths is just because they're not being taught by experts. You know, that's another thing
Well, that's the problem across the board. No school has enough staff to have the right class sizes, to have the right support, to have the right anything. We don't have the money, we don't have the people. So kids are being taught subjects by non-specialists and all sorts of other things are happening. It's horrible. And for a subject like maths, it is so important that you have someone who knows what they're doing and understands how to teach it properly. It's so, I mean, I'm not trying to say that maths is more important or harder in that sense, but I just it's a strictly academic subject in that sense. You know, there's very little kind of creative scope. Like there are certain English lessons and non-English specialists could absolutely smash, and there are some that they just could not do. But I think maths is pretty consistently mathsy. But I think one of the other issues, in addition to staffing, it's what Lucy said. It's attendance. We've been so frustrated this past year with retake students thinking they failed it the first time, they can not show up to anything, and somehow they're magically going to pass, and then being surprised when they didn't. Blows my mind. So these kids aren't showing up. So why are we the amount of stress and pressure it causes us having to chase them, but also they clearly don't want to be doing it. They clearly don't care, because if they did care, they would be in class. That's the bottom line. So they don't care. Why? Like who is gaining anything from this? All I see is losses. I see losses in the kids' results. I see losses in our time and our energy and our effort. I see where we could actually be teaching, because there are so few maths and English, math teachers, and I teach English. There's so few teachers. Can we not please be timetabled with students that actually are going to benefit from this and are going to put some work in and going to give something back? Can we not help people who are going to benefit from it, instead of wasting timetable hours on retakes who refuse to show 90% of the time? It's just a horrendous waste of resources. And then from the student's perspective, if they know that I was against this, I don't know why it was ever put in place. I mean, I get the kind of logic of it, but when you really think about it, when you think about what is on the maths exams, when you think about what is on the English exams, the English language exams, they're not English language exams. Half of them are literature. Well, 25% of it. 25% of it is creative writing. What the heck does that have to? When are they gonna? How is that? The English language exams are not fit for purpose. And to make those two things, every student has to retake until they pass. Why? Why not history? Why not being able to use sources and decode like, why those two? It doesn't make any sense. It never
I'm going back to the past now and trying to remember the reasoning. The reasoning was about, again, standards. We're going back to the big reforms in education under Gove. My understanding, and again, I could be wrong because I'm trying to reach back into the past, not the distant past, was the idea that this would enforce higher standards. The exams for maths and English were going to be harder, more dense, more traditional, and the idea being that every student had to pass and no student could not pass. So even if that meant resitting, and this was part of the overall idea of raising standards. Now, I'm going to plug myself and Tom Rogers' interview with Nick Gibb this week, some shameless self-promotion. But what he was saying then to me, because it's very fresh, is the PISA scores. He's like, look at the PISA scores, look at the rising English and maths scores for English students, as in like students in England. And he was very proud of that. And he said, we have raised standards. Now, there's controversy about the PISA scores, but that I'm just trying to think, Ray, what the reasoning was. And that was the reasoning. Now, I sort of see the idea, but when I see students, I had a student this year who actually did quite well in history, and she just had to resit that maths exam over and over and over again. And I do think it must be horrible. I can see why they say, look, you must have a basic standard of maths. Surely once you've resat it 3 times, you're probably at I don't know, even if you keep getting a 3, you've probably done a lot of maths. And this was a student who was turning up. This was a student, and I know this is anecdotal, it's just one person. I'm just looking at some of the alternatives, so I don't know what we think about this. OCR has said you could keep maths for students who don't get a 4, but it would be an alternative to GCSEs more tailored towards lower achieving pupils, which would be sort of a lesser maths, basic skills, but it wouldn't just be the GCSE exam over and over and over again. Now, I think that's
insanity. I think that sounds fine.
Reasonable. I don't know what you guys think. Yeah.
Instead of just going around and around and around and around and expecting different results, try something different, something more practical, life skills, like actual things. There are different types of maths, right? Just doing the same curriculum, the same spec, the same exams over and over and over again, and destroying 2 further years of your life. I just do not see the point, and I don't think that's benefiting anyone involved in this at all.
I don't think it destroys your life. I don't think it, but it's certainly not good for you to feel that you've got to go into an exam you didn't want to do. I would say my understanding was, and I've never checked this out actually, but my understanding was there was always supposed to be that you're supposed to have the higher, the foundation, and there was supposed to be a tier of maths examination below the foundation that would be able to provide something for the lowest ability mathematicians, and I taught lots of those. In my last year I taught 2 groups of students who all had SEND of some form or another, learning difficulties that meant they were never going to get a grade 4, and scrabbling around trying to find an alternative type of exam because they wanted to do exams. They were doing other GCSEs and other subjects, so trying to find something between the functional maths, and there was entry level maths, and trying to find something that hit the point. It would have been so good, but apparently my understanding was that never made it in, because I think Gove left the position before he put it in place. But that would have been the answer, I think, because at least they could have been trying to get a higher grade on a lower paper, if you see what I mean.
When I first started at the college, there was a subject, was it called core maths, which was an A-level maths.
It's not an A-level,
but it was
it's still a thing.
Well, yes, but what's back is statistics, which is again, my college has just reintroduced statistics, but this again, you still can't. You don't need a 7 to do statistics. My college, you need a 7 in GCSE maths to do A-level maths, which is, very high. You don't need that. But we're talking about students with 2s and 3s, who have been on the college on a program. I have students who I allow into history because to me, I'm looking at their English language. I'm looking at how they did at history GCSE. I'm not so bothered about their maths. But it doesn't seem to have that much of where it has an effect is time. I don't think it actually affects their overall history results if they've got a 3 in maths. I can understand other subjects. Philosophy is different because they feel that maths and philosophy, because of the logic, are a lot more in tune. But where it does affect history is these students who are having to resit while trying to do A-levels or B-Techs or C-Techs. I guess. So I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. I guess the argument you get is this is just all part of the dumbing down. Students can't pass, so we're finding solutions for them instead of just, setting standards high. I'm trying to think of the argument why they should resit.
Sorry, Ray, can I give you an idea, though, as to why? As somebody who got an E and then got a D in their maths and then eventually got a C. And the only reason I got a C was because I did it through the Royal Navy, because my husband was still serving, and they only taught the foundation paper and we could do the higher, but I didn't go on and do that because you had to teach it yourself and I didn't have time because I was studying for my degree. But by not having that C grade, when I joined the Navy, I did very, very well in the entry exams, and so they said, we want you to sit a different exam because you could become something called an artificer, which is a higher level of sort of engineering entry. So I went and sat the exams. One of them was maths. It wasn't even hard. I look back and I think about my confidence in maths was so low, that was the problem, that I crashed and burned in it, so therefore I couldn't do that. I couldn't teach. All I ever wanted to do was be a teacher, and I couldn't teach until I had my math GCSE, which was why I took it, because I then had my degree, a science degree, but I didn't have the maths that I needed to do it, and that was what motivated me to do it. And when I taught myself, interestingly enough, 1 hour a week at on the Navy base, that was when I fell in love with it, and it just clicked and it fell into place. And so but it holds you back. That is one of the reasons why they want to give the opportunity, beyond an opportunity, they want to make young people do it, because that grade 4 opens so many more doors to you than not having it. That's the reason. And I have evidence of that holding me back, to be fair.
Sorry, Ray, what were you going to say before?
I was just going to comment on, I didn't mean to sound all guardian melodramatic with it ruins their life. I was just hinting at what Dave said. I was hinting at what Dave said about it takes time away from everything else.
Absolutely.
And this is why I'm constantly trying to drill into GCSE students. Like, it's going to suck up so much of your time next year, and you don't want it to. Just get it done now. Just because half of these kids seem to think, oh, I can just retake. No, you will regret your whole existence if you don't let it get that far. But it takes away so much from what they actually want to focus on and what they want to be doing. And you got a science degree without having your maths GCSE?
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Standard form, I just kind of put that to one side. I got what it looked like, but converting between them, I wouldn't have been. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But I did it with university, you see. So,
to me, I feel like that's another indication that how well you perform on these specific exams is not a reliable indicator of what you're capable of in different disciplines. And it's treated like you have to have a 4 in maths, you have to have a 4 in English, because then all these doors open, because that's true. But is that, should it be?
Yeah.
Because is that the way it should work? I don't know.
It's the only way that we can differentiate. If we want our doctors, for example, to have the highest, to prove that they have the intellect to cope with the training, to cope with the job, the demands of the job, the quick thinking, all of those things, then we need evidence. And some nice ideas like Polly Toynbee had about, we could all just have a sort of a qualification in sort of life skills or something like that. That isn't going to tell you who's going to be the best doctor. Do you get what I mean? So we need to differentiate.
Yeah, and I don't think... there was a whole other debate that we definitely don't have time for, and I'm not an expert on, about the size of GCSE maths and whether the actual GCSE maths itself is the problem. And then a lot of them said, well, actually it starts earlier. The students who fail, you can track them all the way through, and with their SATs and poor teaching. But I'm not saying, that students shouldn't have a maths required. It's definitely required for certain A levels. And I guess it's what opportunities. But the thing is, when I think about the opportunities, by the time they get to us as a college, we're a standalone sixth form. If they don't have the grades, say, for philosophy, right? They want to do philosophy, they have to have, I think, 5 or a 6 in maths, because the head of philosophy has explained to me it's more of a logic subject. It's quite different to history. It doesn't matter if they're resitting. They're still not allowed to do philosophy. They have to do other A levels or C-Techs or B-Techs. So it's not like the resit. If they pass in January or, when the exams are, they can't, their A levels already started. At that stage, they can't restart and go to philosophy. So it's already, it's already held you back, or it changed your goal. And look, that's fine. That's what exams are for in a way. We can argue about that. But this idea about resitting and resitting and resitting, I'm like, well, what is the purpose? If it was just about math skills, but once you pass, it doesn't really change that much. You've got the pass, but you can't say, I guess you could go to another college, but you can't at our college say, oh, cool, can I go back to September now and restart the subjects I wasn't allowed to do? No.
But maybe that's that push that Ray was talking about. And I do have to talk to you about something else in a second, but maybe that's that push that Ray was talking about, where they say, I can just resit. And when you're young, when you're 15, 16, you haven't got the experience behind you to recognize that the decisions you make on Thursday may impact the outcomes on Sunday. Do you get what I mean? And I think that's one of those things, when they find that actually, oh my God, Miss Whitehouse was right. I can't now do philosophy because I know you're English, but do you get what I mean? It's that same thing. And sometimes we have to learn from those mistakes. And my goodness, I mean, I've learned from a lot of mistakes. But one mistake I don't want to make is forgetting to tell you about Hachette Learning, because this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachettelearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Thank you. I mean, my sort of final ideas on this one is I'm not against a basic standard of maths, and maybe I'm not completely against the idea that if you got a 3 or lower and you come to sixth form or A level, that maybe there is another form of maths that you should do. I don't believe in the ongoing resit of like the GCSE over and over and over again. One of the things that Nick Gibb was really proud of in the interview that Tom and I did was, we got rid of resits. Students used to be able to do all these resits and we got rid of them. So there's just one big exam at the end. And he was really like, this is a great thing because it forced standards and it didn't mean you could just resit and resit and resit and your A levels, which is all well and good, apart from these two things that they've put on a pedestal and said, like, we've got rid of resits for everything else, and we're really proud, and you just do it. Except for English and maths, which you will resit I can't remember. We put students in, don't we? And that was one of the other things, like November, and then if they fail that, it's like January, and then I think it goes to I think it's like 4 to 5 times at A level. I could be wrong on that, but it's quite a lot if you keep failing. And I just think that seems a bizarre way to do it, just on those 2 subjects alone. And that's, I don't know what the solution is, but it does seem a very odd. And I'm like, what is it helping these students to do? What is it that we want them to have? And why are we doing this? And so in that sense, I don't think it's dumbing down. I'm not saying we get rid of some sort of reset, but I just don't see why they have to do the GCSE one over and over and over and over again.
I mean, I'm an English teacher, and I don't get why it's so important, because I don't think the English language exams, papers test what they should do. Yeah. So if that was given an overhaul, and it was the way I thought it should be, that's actually going to help them in life a little bit more and develop skills that they actually need, not just in year 12, but everywhere, then I'd support it absolutely, because it is such an important core skill. But the way it stands, it just seems a little bit ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. And kids ask me all the time, and am I going to lie today, or am I going to, I don't know. I just, even as an English teacher, I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Well, I mean, I was going to say it's quite interesting that you talk about the reform, actually, of the course and the exam itself, and that maybe they're not teaching those skills. I think maths does. I think that sometimes we forget. There are 2 things I really want to say. So the first thing I want to say is that sometimes we forget the skills that you get from the things that you learn. So students would say, oh my God, miss, why do we have to do this? Like, when am I ever going to use this again in my life? And we would say, well, you're not. You're going to use it in May or whatever, because you've got to sit and examine it. So that's when you've got to use it. When am I ever going to use trigonometry? You probably won't. But, if you're able to use it, then it demonstrates an ability, that an employer might say, well, they did really well in their maths, so they'll probably be able to cope with the demands of this job or whatever. So I recognise that. The biggest issue I had, and I wasn't at all, Ray, having a go at you when you said about destroying their lives or whatever. I wasn't. But I was pretty radicalised by the language in the Guardian article, which repeatedly made learning sound like a sufferance. And there is a movement.
That bothered me too.
There is a movement that encourages people to see education as a cruelty done to children, as an irrelevance, and all of those things, and it drives me mad. And maybe if not just parents, but particularly celebrities, stopped selling this thing all the time. Well, I was rubbish at maths. You don't need maths. I hated maths. I couldn't do maths. I failed my maths twice. I had 3 children before I resat my maths GCSE. And my 3 children never knew that I didn't do maths. I was always deliberately really positive about maths around them. 2 of them went on to do maths A level. 1 of them went on to do further maths A level as well. I made sure that they loved maths, but I made sure that I shored up those basics as well when they were smaller, as much as I possibly could. And I think that there is a negativity in society about maths, and we'd probably stand a bit of a better chance, even if we only had, what did you say, 20% of failures, or failures to achieve a grade 4 or above.
Well, no, the other way around. Only 17% passed. So you're talking 80% failure. 80.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so,
that was terrible maths. I said 80. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, I've probably got it the wrong way around. But if we could reduce that by even 5%, that would be amazing. So
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, Lucy, about maths. My own experience, just very quickly. Show my age here. Back in Australia, where I grew up, maths was not compulsory in the 90s in Queensland, where I went through, and I had for senior, and I didn't want to do it. I thought this was amazing. I don't have to do it. They had 3 tiers of maths. The lowest was called Maths in Society. I had massive arguments with my father about. He was an engineer, and I didn't want to do maths, and he was like, "You've got to do Maths in Society," and I eventually did it, and I'm so happy I did it. I have to thank my father for forcing me into it. And I'm so glad I have that basic standard of maths. So I do agree. And I think maths is so important. I just don't think the solution is what it is now, which is you did badly. So you're just going to resit the same exam with the same curriculum over and over and over and over again. And don't think that is actually helping to get to the point that I think we all agree on. I totally agree with what you're saying, Lucy. In the I don't think that's making mass positive. I think that is doing the exact opposite of what it should be doing. So thanks so much, Ray and Lucy. I think it was a great show. 270
Can I just
live views. Sorry, Lucy. Yep.
I would like to. Sorry, I have more to talk to you about. Unfortunately, you can't shut me up today. So Teachers Talk Humanities. Are you a teacher of history, geography, or RS? If so, get along to Manchester on Saturday, the 20th of September for TTR Humanities, a day of CPD and networking brought to you for free. That's 0 or nothing for the mathematicians. Grab your tickets on the pinned post on the TTR X account or visit the website at ttradio.org/events. I'm all done.
Cool. Thanks so much. I can see there's 286 people watching at the moment, which is amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. To all those people watching us, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class vision.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.